Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. I've decided to do a video on the acid morph today because I was thinking about a time when I didn't have a lot of money, and instead of saving it wisely I decided to spend a whole chunk of savings on a snake, and that was Jerry's dad. So that was a good 5 years ago. I got Jerry out of it, but it was an expensive morph, and that was just a single gene acid. Now, if you're wondering why I decided to fork out lots of money for a single snake, it's because I don't make very good financial decisions, first off, but also because the acid gene is a really cool gene that has a lot of different effects with a lot of different combination morphs. So, unlike kind of Pastel, Yellowbelly, Cinnamon, for example, which are co-dominant genes or incomplete dominant, whatever terminology you want to use, acid is a dominant gene, just like pinstripe and leopard. And something you'll notice with dominant genes is that they often tend to have a big effect on pattern. So we will get into that in a moment. But the one thing you do want to remember as well with dominant genes is that you don't get a superform. So maybe your best bet is to put them into recessive projects. If you breed an acid to acid, all you get is more acids. And even if one did have 2 copies of a gene, all they would do is produce all acid babies. They wouldn't look visually any different. But even if there isn't a superform, if you just look at Jerry's belly and that cool pattern he's got going, I mean, you can tell why, you can tell why this morph is worth it. Just checking him out, he's got substrate stuck under his chin somehow. But I mean, it's an amazing morph. Even if you can't get a superform, it really performs well in recessive combos, and it also performs well with incomplete dominant genes. It is overall a darkening gene, so you do want to take that into consideration. If you like dark genes, then that's cool. If you don't like dark genes, you need to add some stuff to brighten acid up. But it also has this big, I guess what would you call it? Maybe a busying effect on pattern, where if you mix it with Pastel and some similar genes, it actually makes the pattern a lot busier, which is kind of cool. You can see that going on Jerry. He's an acid Pastel, and he's got a cooler pattern, a more funky pattern than just an acid on its own. So in this video I wanted to kind of get into how acid affects other genes, given that it is mostly a darkening gene, but still manages to make incredible color combinations. And to do that, I am of course going to take you over to look at some of my hatchlings from this year, and we're going to take a look at kind of, first of all, just a regular acid, so you can ID the morph on your own, and you can see why it's special. And then we're going to look at some cool combination morphs, and one in particular which was kind of like my best snake of the year. So before I go on too long, let's head over to the snake room and take a look at some babies. After that, we'll come back and go on Morphmarket for a while to look at some other breeders' projects. So, first off, this is going to be a difficult video because they're extremely active. It's evening and they want some food, but I'm going to try and get through it without one of them escaping. So first of all, we've got this guy who is an acid, possible het clown. I think he probably is a het for clown, but he does look a lot just like a normal acid does. And obviously there's a few features to check out, but first of all is this cool head stamp he's got. That is one of the main features that lets you distinguish the acid gene. In some animals it's almost like a clover leaf. In fact, it's really cool to look at. The second telltale clue of an acid is, if I can get him to sit still, is those, he doesn't want to do it, is those black lips. See, he's got those black lips. It's hard to focus this camera, but yeah, he's got those black lips along those upper labial scales by his heat pits, and that is another telltale clue. After that, you've got this kind of unusual striping down the back and this blotchy kind of joined up pattern. And then within the pattern, you've also got bubbling, a lot of bubbling. So a lot of keyholes and bubbling within the, well, what would be the alien heads, but a lot of them are actually joined to the dorsal pattern, which is also very cool. And after that, he doesn't have it because I think he is het for clown, but a lot of them have just a dark stripe down the center of their belly. And that's another really good clue. And then finally, the final telltale sign of an acid or confusion or static for that matter is a bluish sheen, a blue iridescence, like an indigo color to their black parts of their pattern. And that is really hard to see on camera. But in real life, if you see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think it's one of their coolest features, actually. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see some of this, but it's not easy, especially with this guy, because he's active. He's obviously healthy, but he's extremely active. So after that, I've got an acid pastel, which I think is het for clown, and that is a really cool looking snake. You can tell he's just got an incredibly busy pattern. There's blotches and keyholes and bubbles. The alien heads are almost looking like they do on a hurricane. A lot of the dorsal pattern has bubbling within it as well. It's like a chain pattern down the back. And he's got that cool pattern on the back of the head and a light spot on top of the head. As an acid should, he's still got some black pigment around areas, not so much on the lips, but down the sides for sure. And along the belly there's some spots there, so you can tell, you know, he's still got that abnormal acid pattern, but he's just got an incredibly busy pattern. And he's actually got a more busy pattern than just an acid pastel on its own, so I think that is the influence of the clown gene. And he looks cool, he looks good. But obviously the more genes you add in, the more you get. Now last but not least, this is the one that I'm really annoyed about, because this happens every time I do a video. There's at least one of these snakes is in shed. And as expected, this girl is in shed. So you have no idea how bright she actually is, which is a real pain. That's a real shame, actually. But anyway, she is an acid Firefly Yellowbelly. So she is acid fire pastel Yellowbelly. Oh, he's trying to make a break for it. Yeah, but she is an acid Firefly Yellowbelly. Fire does a lot to pattern. It jumbles it up even more. She's almost got like bands and stripes down the side, which is incredibly cool. The Yellowbelly and the pastel are working to brighten it as well and add contrast. And as well, she's incredibly healthy too, and extremely hungry for some reason. These were all fed actually 2 days ago, so this is kind of surprising me. But anyway, you can just, she obviously doesn't want to sit still, but you can see how colourful she is. She's even got yellow coming down the sides of the ventral scales, and that kind of cloudy patterning. That's a big part in thanks to the fire gene. But you can already see with just a combination morph, just with other incomplete dominant genes, it creates something incredible. And again, with the pastel gene and the clown gene, it creates something incredible without even being a visual clown. So just looking at these combination morphs I've made with like simple, cheap genes, like fire, Yellowbelly, pastel, clown. I wouldn't say it's a cheap gene, but it's, simple clown. It's pretty easy to get a hold of. It's already created these kind of incredible combination morphs. So now we've checked these out, let's head over to Morphmarket and see what some big kind of pro breeders have done. So over here on Morphmarket, we have got some acid combination morphs. They're all recessive combination morphs. And first off is this albino acid black pastel Yellowbelly, which has been made by Esplundi, I think that's how you say it, genetics in Winchester, Virginia. And this is just an example of how well, a dark morph like acid can work with black pastel and albino. Black pastel on its own works well with albino because it adds depth and color and contrast to the yellow patterning. But when you add acid as well, it adds even more depth and contrast and color to the yellow patterning. So you get an animal that, in real life it would look even more incredible in this photo, but you get an animal that is like an enhanced albino. It's kind of like a lavender, but it's, in a way, you can make even nicer albino combinations with genes like acid. And quite frankly, when you look at the price, it's not that expensive considering it's a relatively new morph. I have got a couple of acids with that are het for albino, so I'm probably thinking maybe down the line I'll go for an albino clown acid. I think that'd be cool. But only time will tell. As I say, this is kind of a new gene still. And just in case any of you are wondering, it is the same as the confusion gene, which is why some of these combinations might look familiar to you. Next up, we've got this acid butter yellowbelly clown ball python by Wilbanks Captive Reptiles. Now, if you haven't heard of Wilbanks Captive Reptiles, I would recommend going and taking a look on their Morphmarket. This is a big breeder. He's been around for years. I'm pretty sure he's had some world firsts as well. And he's just got some incredible combination morphs every year. And I quite like this one because it's like a different take on the, we've seen so many butter and lesser clowns over the years. It's like a combination that's kind of done to death, if you know what I mean. And they're pretty, but they're also kind of pale as well. In this one, he's got the butter gene in there, but he's added acid and yellowbelly as well. So you've got like a darker, more mahogany kind of coloured butter clown kind of combination, but you've also got that cool kind of band of pattern down the back, or reduced pattern, however you want to say it, and that cool pattern on the lips and the face where you can see that the acid gene is working well with the clown gene, and it's added depth to the whole butter colour as well. So I think when you take something that was popular before, like butter clown or lesser clown, and then you add a new incomplete dominant gene like acid, you can just bring an old morph back to life and make it more popular than ever and more expensive as well, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. So that's two cases already where Pastel, or acid rather, and clown are kind of showing or acid and recessive genes, I wanted to say, are showing their worth. But the last one is something really interesting, and it might surprise you a little bit. So the last one we've got is this acid pastel clown, and that is by More Pythons LLC in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But just an acid pastel clown, and that doesn't sound like a complicated morph, but you can see that it has, there's a nice banding and this kind of cool funky pattern on the body. But what's really interesting is that dotted pattern on the head, and that is from the interaction of clown, acid and pastel all together. And really, you'd look at the head on that animal and you'd expect spot nose to be in there, but it doesn't have spot nose. It's literally just acid, pastel and clown. And that is such a simple morph that you could make, within a couple of years of breeding acid into your projects, or a few years rather, maybe 2 generations, let's say. And it's $3,000 still. It's just an incredible looking animal, but it's simple. And I think when you look at combinations that combine clown and pastel and acid and yellowbelly or other similar genes, you really do start to see just how incredible this gene is, and like how simple it can be to make something new or unusual looking with it. Right, I'm back. I just had to put Jerry away because he was getting far too restless to carry on with the rest of the video. And I also wanted to say at this point, I'm really sorry if I've used the wrong terminology at any point during this video, but it's been kind of a long day at work, so just in case I said incomplete dominant when I meant to say dominant, to clear it up, acid is a dominant gene. So I hope I didn't get that wrong at any point, but I do tend to jumble my words and get a bit confused when it's been a long day. Might be age, or it might be my brain, who knows. But anyway, what I'm hoping is that with this video you've seen that acid is an incredible gene, and it has a range of different effects on different morphs and combination morphs. It has a strong darkening effect, so you could get some really weird dark looking combinations with pinstripe or cinnamon, for example. And it also has that busying effect on the pattern and that incredible interaction with clown. So there are just a huge range of amazing things that you can do with this gene. Now, what I did just wanted to say quickly was a couple of points before I end this video. First is that acid is still an expensive gene, it's still an investment, and it's important that you remember that with dominant genes, dominant or incomplete dominant genes, price volatility is high. A $500 acid now will be a $300 acid in 2 years' time. So that is something to kind of bear in mind. If you want to get your investment back with a gene like acid or confusion or static or whatever, you will need to get it into recessive projects as soon as possible. 2 generations down the line, you'll be getting a good return on your investment, but unless you breed it into recessive projects, it is going to be hard to make money back on something this expensive. Second of all, I wanted to say that yes, it does have a strong effect on pattern, but incomplete dominant and dominant genes all have varying effects on an animal's overall pattern. So you can see that Yellowbelly, single copy Yellowbelly, has a small effect on pattern, mainly just removing pattern from the belly. Whereas leopard is a dominant gene that has a strong effect, pinstripe has a strong effect, and then enchi has a strong effect in making the pattern less busy. And for example, champagne has a really strong wiping off effect on pattern. So my advice would be, I mean, go ahead and try it if you want to, but for me, I won't be putting acid into projects with champagne and probably not enchi, for example, because of this variation in how much different genes affect pattern. Those genes affect pattern a lot, and when you've got a dominant gene like acid that has a big effect on pattern, I just don't want to throw away that busy pattern by giving it, mixing it with something that really wipes pattern out like champagne. So that's where I stand on that, and I think these are good things to think about if you are doing a long-term project. But as always, I would love to hear from you and know if I'm right, if I'm wrong, if you've got different ideas or different projects to do. So please do like and subscribe, but please also do get in touch and tell me what you think about things. Thank you very much.